Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Federated Farmers Policy Presents. Today is on immigration, and we've got two awesome speakers from Immigration New Zealand here today. And yeah, I'll introduce them in a minute. I'll introduce them now, actually. It's Craig from Immigration New Zealand. He's a relationship manager for sector and skills. And second up is Hero. He's a relationship manager from sector and skills. So just a quick update on what Feds has been doing before we I hand over to those two gentlemen. In the last month, incredibly busy on this immigration subject, especially on the residency. I've met with Immigration Minister Christopher Fawley last Friday on these issues pertaining to it. And also after this Zoom call, meeting with the Minister of Agriculture on getting more dairy staff in the country, and tomorrow meeting with Minister of Ag and the Minister of Immigration, Christopher Fawley, on getting more tractor drivers into the country. So lots happening behind the scenes, but today, more importantly, the residency application, and it affects for my staff. So it's something I'm going to go announce. I was pretty excited actually for my staff to think they'll be New Zealanders one day and very soon. So far, there's been quite a few thousand who have joined the December application round, and a lot of them will be getting emails soon to say they're residents, which is pretty exciting for them. But the main lot for primary sector will be happening in March. So yeah, it's a pretty exciting time for my staff, and to have up to 9,000 primary sector staff who could become New Zealanders and not having to go through 3-year, 1-year, 6-month visas. It's pretty exciting, and yeah, it's a big step forward for us. So I'll probably hand over now to Immigration New Zealand, Hero and Craig, and they can kick it off with their presentation. And please ask some Q&A in the chat box. The more questions, the better. And if we don't get through them all, we'll answer them in another later on.
Thanks, Chris, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. So as you've already heard, my name's Craig Walsh. I'll do roughly half the presentation, and Hero, my colleague, he'll finish it off. So next slide, please. So just a little bit of background as to this particular residence category. So, and just bear in mind, we're just talking about this one category. There are other residence options available for people, but this is the one that was announced by the government a few months ago, and it's a one-off pathway to residence for people who are already in the country and were here during COVID. Well, we're still going through COVID, but it's estimated that around about 165,000 people may be eligible for this residence, and that's made up of about 110,000 main applicants and around about 55,000 family members. So it's not for everybody, but as you can see, there's some pretty significant numbers there, and as Chris already alluded to, also a fairly significant number in the agricultural sector or the farming sector. So it's available to people who have already submitted a well, as at the 29th of September, they'd submitted a resident visa application under either the skilled migrant category, which is sometimes referred to as the point system, or under the residence from work category, or people who have submitted an expression of interest under the skilled migrant category, or other work visa holders who may not have been eligible through the current skilled residence pathway, or they hadn't already applied. The next slide, thanks. Next slide. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. So who is eligible? It's only people that are on certain types of visas, and that includes those on a post-study visa. So they would be former students in New Zealand who have now got a post-study visa. People who have a work visa under the talent accredited employer work visas, the essential skills work visa, which is probably the most common visa type that people have a visa on, long-term skills shortage list, the South Island contribution work visa, and some categories of people on a critical purpose visa. So just for those of you that don't know, the critical purpose visa is the category that people can apply to come into the country currently while the border is effectively closed. So there's people in that category. But those that are ineligible are those on a visitor visa, a student visa, someone on a working holiday visa, seasonal workers, someone on a specific purpose work visa, and a short-term critical purpose visa. So that means less than 6 months, as opposed to those that are eligible. It's for more than 6 months. I know that some people have lobbied the minister to try and get other eligible visa types onto this list, but the answer has pretty much been no. This is what's been agreed to, and that's what is applicable. So next slide, thanks. So what are the requirements? The person must have been in New Zealand on the 29th of September, and they need to be on an eligible visa or have applied for an eligible visa on or before that date that may later be granted. In other words, the application's with Immigration New Zealand to be processed, and if that visa is subsequently granted, they would still become eligible. So that's the first bit, and then there are 3 different, well, there's 4, I'll get to the next one, but there's, for requirement 1, there are 3 different categories which are applicable, and people need to meet one of these categories, not all 3. So the first one is settled. In other words, they've been in New Zealand for 3 years or more. In other words, they arrived here before the 29th of September 2018. And during that time, they've spent a minimum of 821 days in New Zealand. The other category is for people who are on the skilled criteria, which means they're earning at or above the median wage, which is currently $27 an hour. So some of the information they would need to provide is their employment agreement, a bank statement, or inland revenue summary of their pay slips or income, just to show that they are meeting that salary requirement. Or the third category is what's referred to as the scarce list, which is where someone is working in a role on a scarce occupational list, which there are several of those lists. And as you'll see on the right-hand side, that includes the long-term skills shortage list, a role that might require occupational registration in the health or education sector in New Zealand, which obviously isn't so applicable to this, this audience, or personal carers and other critical health workers again. But the one that does apply is specified primary sector roles, which is a very significant and long list. If you haven't already seen it, that's available on the immigration website. And I'll just highlight some of the roles in another slide. But just before I leave this slide, as you'll see in the top right corner in the red area there are 2 significant dates that people need to meet these requirements. It's that the date that's already passed on the 29th of September and on the date they submit their residence application. So what we're meaning there, for example, is someone might have had a work visa that meets the requirements on the 29th of September. For whatever reason, they might have changed their visa since then or gone on to a different visa. But as long as they still meet the requirements when they come to apply, that is still acceptable. And when we say come to apply, all applications need to be lodged before the end of July next year. So next slide, please. So in terms of the scarce occupation list, this is just an example of some of the roles which are on the specified primary sector list. And as you'll see, there are some there that cover quite a lot of people. So I won't read them all, but agricultural, horticultural, mobile plant operator, dairy cattle farmer, livestock farmer, etc. So there are others. We're just highlighting these 6 or 7 as an example of the type of roles that are on there. But if you have any staff that may meet these requirements and they perhaps don't meet the first 2 categories of either the time they've spent in the country or meeting the skilled criteria, certainly go and have a look at that list, which is accessible through the Immigration New Zealand website, and just to see whether or not their role is on that list. Next slide, thanks. So there is a second requirement or a second group of people that can be eligible under this category, and that is those people that come into the country on a long-term critical purpose visa. And as I mentioned before, long-term is more than 6 months. So they need to arrive in New Zealand before the end of July next year and lodge a visa application under this residence category before that date as well, or on or before that date. So some of the short-term seasonal roles are excluded, as we touched on before, and that includes, well, those that are excluded is deep water or deep sea fishing crew, and agricultural and horticultural mobile plant operators that are on that short-term seasonal type of visa, and also shearers. The reason for that is that there were some critical purpose categories for those roles, but because of the short-term nature, they're not fitting the criteria for this resident visa. So what this category is basically highlighting is that there were some people who may not have actually arrived in New Zealand yet that could still potentially be eligible for this resident visa if they are able to get into the country and lodge their application before the end of July next year, if they meet the long-term critical purpose visa category. Next slide, thanks. So I'll hand over to Hiro now, and he'll take you through the remainder of the presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hiro. Here in this slide, I will explain the health and character requirements for 2021 resident visa. So in terms of the health requirement, as usual, we require medical certificate. However, we only require limited medical certificate if applicants have not submitted one within the last 3 years. So we usually request general medical certificate for most resident visa application category. However, this time for this visa, we only require limited medical certificate. Chest X-ray is required as per the standard requirement. Regarding the character requirement, overseas police certificate is not required, and New Zealand police check will be carried out by Immigration New Zealand. National security check, this may apply to some people, but not all. And if they need to fill in the form, then we will contact them. Next slide, please. So application timeline. So there are 2 phases under 2021 resident visa, and phase 1 started last week, and phase 2 will start in March next year. So there are 2 groups of people who are eligible to apply for 2021 resident visa during the first phase. So they are the people who have submitted the resident application under skilled migrant category or resident from work category on or before 29th of September. The second group of people who can apply for resident visa now are the people who have submitted an expression of interest under skilled migrant category and have dependent children 17 years or older as of 29th of September. So they can apply for a resident visa now, and all the other people who meet the criteria have to wait until March. However, this category is open until the 31st of July, so there is still plenty of time for them to apply. Next slide, please. So additional information. So the cost is just over $2,000, so $2,160, including GST. And during the first phase, people do not have to pay the fee upfront. So which means once immigration officer made a decision in principle, then they will ask them to pay the fee. So the fee collected a little bit later stage of the application. So Immigration New Zealand sent an email to people who are eligible to apply from December 1st. And if they are not sure whether they are eligible or not, they can always use the eligibility check tool on our website. Next one, please. So interim visa for 2021 resident visa. So once they apply for 2021 resident visa and their temporary work visa is expiring while they are waiting for the outcome, they can get the interim visa. And on the interim visa, they can stay in New Zealand lawfully and they can continue to work for the employer. let's look at the example here. So someone who is on the essential skills work visa applies for 2021 resident visa on the 15th of March, and their essential skills work visa expires on the 1st of May. So when the essential skills work visa expires, Immigration New Zealand will contact the applicant, and we can issue an interim visa on the day, one day after the essential skills work visa expired. So for this case, on the 2nd of May, we can issue an interim visa for them to stay in New Zealand lawfully. And the interim visa will last for 12 months or until they get the 2021 resident visa approved. So for this example, on the 1st of August, 2021 resident visa is approved. So from the from that date, 2021 resident visa will replace interim visa. Just to note, interim visa cannot be applied for. So this is something Immigration New Zealand will raise with the applicant. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of things going on in the next 12 months. So I hope this timeline will help you to understand what will happen in the next 12 months. So if you look at the green line top, so work to residence category has closed on the 31st of October. So Immigration New Zealand is not accepting a new work visa applications under work to residence category, including talent accredited employer scheme and also long-term skill shortage list scheme. Having said so, the people who are already on the pathway to residency, they can still apply for residency visa after 1st of November. 2021 resident visa will start from December, or started from 1st of December, and will finish on 31st of July. So people who want to apply for 2021 resident visa must apply before the end of July next year. Essential skills work visa, which is commonly used in this for this sector, will continue to be available until 3rd of July next year. And suspension of expression of interest selections under skilled migrant category will continue at least until the 31st of July next year. Instead of skilled migrant category, we have now 2021 resident visa. So we encourage people to apply for 2021 resident visa instead of skilled migrant category. The accredited employer work visa will be fully introduced on the 4th of July. And this accredited employer work visa will replace essential skills work visa. 2 months before before we fully introduce this category, we will open up the category. The employers can start applying for an accreditation from the 9th of May. And also they can start applying for a job check from the same date. So this is a summary of what is going to happen in the next 12 months. This is actually the end of the presentation. Thank you for listening to us, and back to Chris.
Thank you for that. We'll go to questions and answers, and I just had a few text into me. So I'll start on those ones, and there's one in the chat box too. So the application online, could I fill it out myself? Is it pretty simple, or do I need the help of an immigration advisor?
Well, the whole point of this visa category is that it is a much more simplified application process, and in terms of the documentation that is required compared to some other residence categories. As people might have picked up, as we're saying, there's no need to provide medical checks if they've already been provided. There's no English language test. There's no need to provide police certificates unless immigration gets New Zealand ones for the applicant. So it is a pretty straightforward process as far as residence applications go. It's up to the individual to decide if they want to use an immigration advisor or not. But also on the Immigration New Zealand website is an actual application checklist. And I've just got one in front of me now, which I know you can't see, but what I'm getting at is that it just highlights some of the documentation which is required, and it's only an A4 piece of paper. So that in itself probably highlights that it's fairly light on documentation. But not only that, immigration already has some information that people have provided with earlier applications, so it's utilizing that information or the time they've been in the country. So long story short, no, you don't have to go to an advisor if you don't want to. It's your choice, but the process is pretty streamlined and pretty straightforward if people want to familiarize themselves with that information on the website and the checklist that's available as well. So they'll probably see how straightforward it potentially is.
That's good. That confirms my suspicions. I thought it was pretty simple that I could fill it out myself. So
there you go.
I thought it passed my test, and you know, it did look simple to me too. So when I went online and had a look at the application online, which is on your website too, isn't it?
Yes, and that's something different with this residence category. It is all online, whereas previous resident visas were lodged in hard copy. So that's another way of, and just in case somebody heard, there were a few hiccups last week getting it online, but they've all been sorted out now. So it's all go.
So I can fill it out, save page by page, and come back to it, and it's still there online, then push send when I'm finished. Is that correct?
Yes. So as I say, there'll be some people that won't be able to apply until March next year because they fit that second phase of applicant, but those that are available now, they can. In fact, we've already heard of some applications that have already been approved and it only opened up on the 1st of December.
That's what I heard too. So yeah, great news. So I'll just go to some of the questions. One there from Victoria. Do we need to use the accredited employer pathway only when our employees' essential work skill visa expires?
No, you don't need accreditation to support migrants with the essential skills work visa applications. So accreditation only works with the talent work to residence scheme. So for the essential skills work visa, you don't need to be accredited.
Okay. So
but just adding to that, from next year, when the new accredited employer work visa policy comes in from July next year, yes, you will.
Yeah.
But that's a whole new accredited employer policy as opposed to the one that did exist.
So there's one from Anom, always like those. If a candidate is being paid the minimum wage, have spent required time in New Zealand, but were not in New Zealand on the 29th of September 2021, are they still eligible, having spent previous time in New Zealand?
Unfortunately, no, they won't be, because people must have been in New Zealand on the 29th of September to be eligible for this resident visa.
Unless they've come in a MIQ exception, is that right?
Yeah, if they subsequently come in under the critical purpose category and they get here before the end of July and lodge their resident visa application before the end of July, they could be eligible.
Okay, that's cool. We'll get on to next one is down from Steph. Have staff who applied for work through residence and waited now between 2 to 4 years, what happens to those applications? They should be in the queue now, shouldn't they?
That's correct. We still continue to process those residence applications. However, we strongly encourage them to apply for 2021 resident visa because this category is much more simpler, and the processing time should be quicker than the other residence category.
I'd just add to that too, is that people won't be expected to pay twice. So if they've already applied for a residence application under another category and it's not yet decided, and they lodge an application under this 2021 resident visa, there will be the option of either refunding a fee or paying the difference in the fee if there is one. So they won't be paying for 2 residence applications if they do decide to apply under this category.
So I got another question, Victoria. I understand what she means now. From July next year, do all employers need to be accredited so that staff can get an essential skilled work visa?
Yes, they will,
Yep.
but and without getting too detailed, it'll actually be called an accredited employer work visa at that point.
So on the 4th of July, essential skills work visa will be replaced by the accredited employer work visa.
Okay, cool. I think that answers her question, and that's what I thought the answer was. And I had one more question on the medical certificate. You know, if they got lodged from a previous application for a 3-year visa, they'll still be in the immigration system, won't they?
That's correct. Yes. So if they have submitted a medical certificate in the last 3 years, and it has been deemed as an acceptable standard of health, then they will not. They don't have to provide a medical certificate this time.
Awesome. And we've got another 3 minutes, so I'll just any more questions? Anyone else want to chuck some quick questions on? So yeah, I also sit on a residency immigration working group, which of about 6 other associations. So I've actually been quite surprised sitting in this group that applications that they got put in a week ago were actually they've said to us that they've sending out letters this week saying, well, congratulations, you've got a residency visa. So, from my perspective, it's been quite a quick turnaround if you filled in the paperwork quite quick.
And it is a I think Hiro touched on it before. It is a category which immigration is prioritizing. So it just highlights that. And also, as if you've got people who are having an application that's sitting in the system and has been there for some time, they may want to think about applying under this category, because in all likelihood it will be processed faster than their application that's already been put in previously.
That's cool. My apologies, there's some sound outside. There's some builders working outside my house, so if you hear some background noise. There's no further questions. We'll wrap this up, and thank you to Hiro and Craig for being on here today. I've actually looked at the application a couple of times, and I think it's pretty simple to fill out, personally speaking. And even if your staff members' English is not as good, or their ability to read is not as good, I think it's a good opportunity to sit down together and do this as a team together online. And I'm going to help my staff do it online as a team and get it done. And I think it's pretty simple. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for our primary sector staff to get residency in New Zealand. It's something we've advocated for about 10 years, a good pathway. But like previous people have said to me, there's still a shortfall of staff working on farms. We're working very hard behind the scenes, and I've got many meetings this week and last week and coming up trying to get some sensible outcomes on this. So I thank you for your support. Thank you for being on here today, and we'll see you soon, and have a very good Merry Christmas.